Once again, the BBC has given airtime to a police officer boldly claiming that grooming gangs are not predominantly made up of Pakistani men. But when you actually dig into the clip, and more importantly, the so-called data they're relying on, it falls apart fast. First, the data set they reference is only from 2024. A single year, not a full picture of the problem. Even worse, less than a third of the suspects in that data even had their ethnicity recorded. Hardly a solid foundation to make sweeping claims. The truth is, when you look at the broader studies and the undeniable facts, Pakistani men are statistically up to 5 times more likely to be responsible for grooming offences compared to the general population. That's a massive overrepresentation, and any honest analysis would acknowledge it. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how the BBC and their chosen voices are twisting the narrative, and why so many people are fed up with the relentless whitewashing of one of Britain's most serious scandals. Let's have a watch of this, but first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Have a watch.
Hear that, and there is nothing more. These crimes are abhorrent, they are appalling, and they are unpalatable, and I am not here to defend errors of the past, and I will not. I can't defend the indefensible. What I can do is talk to you about what policing does now, working alongside other agencies to safeguard vulnerable children, particularly those that go missing. I think in 2025 we are much more alive to some of the signs and symptoms with regards to children that are being exploited, and we work incredibly hard with a number of agencies to understand what that looks like. Victoria, I know you have some data. We have the Child Sexual Exploitation Task Force that has worked incredibly hard for policing to truly understand the scale and scope of what child sexual exploitation is across England and Wales.
Shall I just talk about some of that data, because it is exclusive new data that your organisation has shared with us tonight for our audience. So for the whole of 2024, group-based CSE, child sexual exploitation, i.e. grooming gangs, accounted for 17% of all group-based sexual abuse crimes against children. And looking at the ethnicity of suspects, and the MPCC say you have to regard these figures with caution because only just under a third of suspects had their ethnicity recorded. In 2024, as you can see there, of those suspects where ethnicity is known, just over half are white British. Pakistani suspects are substantially overrepresented in grooming cases where the ethnicity is known. In England and Wales, about 1 in 40 people are Pakistani. Of grooming gang suspects where ethnicity is recorded, about 1 in 8 are Pakistani. And what do those figures tell you, Deputy Chief Constable Riggs?
What those figures tell you is the scale and the scope of what is crime reported figures. So that is actual crimes that have been reported to policing that have been investigated to varying degrees. What that will also show you when it comes to group-based offending is it comes in all shapes, sizes and forms. So whilst there is a real focus in terms of Pakistani Asian males grooming gangs, you will see from that data that it will tell you that there are other risks to children as well, such as...
Can I just say though, like, wherever there's an overrepresentation, there's normally a reason why that person's, whether that's gender, ethnicity, anything, where there's an overrepresentation, that means that there's normally an issue behind that then needs tackling.
Yeah, and all of these issues need tackling. I'm not here to lessen any of this type of offending in the slightest. These are all abhorrent crimes. These crimes are still relevant today. Well, that's what I was going to ask. These ladies are talking about historic crimes, but actually,
is it happening now?
Data, these are actually crimes that happen in society today.
And in how many towns and cities? Because the leader of the Conservative Party says rape gangs have a presence in over 50 towns. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say that out of the 44 forces that we collect this data from, the majority of those forces will have some form of group-based offending. In fact, all of them will have some form of group-based offending reported to them.
Yeah, and the Shadow Justice Secretary suggested that these crimes are from predominantly British Pakistani men, according to your data. That's not true.
That's not true, yeah. And we can only go with the data because that's obviously presenting the evidence base for us. So there is a truth, of course, that there is a proportion of these perpetrators who we will relentlessly pursue in terms of these types of crime, who are obviously Pakistani men, and our data tells us that.
And they're overrepresented when you look at their share of the population.
Yeah, but what you can also see is that there is a proportion of children that are at risk in the family domain, and also in institutional environments, whether that be, clubs, schools, care regimes.
I don't think anyone's ever said, though, that...
What do you make of this? Let me know down below. In other news, Sir Keir Starmer's plans to make Britain a battle-ready nation have been overshadowed by a funding row, as senior Labour figures have warned tax rises will be needed to pay for it. A new defence review has warned Britain faces a new era of threat and must rebuild its military to prepare for war. The Prime Minister said that the UK will move to war-fighting readiness ahead of the review, which he said would create a battle-ready, armour-clad nation. Under the plans, the British Army will grow for the first time in a generation to at least 76,000 full-time soldiers in the next Parliament, surpassing the recommended target of 73,000. While Starmer said he was 100% confident that recommendations in the long-awaited Strategic Defence Review, SDR, would be delivered, senior Labour figures and economists have issued a warning that taxes would have to rise to pay for it. The proposals assume Britain will spend 3% of GDP on defence by 2034, reports The Times. Head of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, think tank Paul Johnson told Times Radio there would need to be some really quite chunky tax increases. Meanwhile, former Labour Foreign Secretary Jack Straw said taxes will have to rise. I don't see any alternative to that, and at the same time, there will have to be some quite difficult retrenchment, particularly on parts of the Social Security budget. Defence Secretary John Healey said he was 100% confident that the money would be found to meet the pledge, but refused to guarantee it. He said, "We will never make commitments to increase funding unless we can show how we're paying for them." Asked by Times Radio if taxes would have to rise to pay for the pledge, he said, "We'll set out how we'll pay for future increases in the future." Meanwhile, former Labour Defence Secretary and author of the review, Lord Robertson of Port Ellen, warned that people will have to pay to keep Britain safe. Conservative former Foreign Secretary Sir James Cleverly accused the government of being timid in its response to the Strategic Defence Review, SDR. In the comments, Cleverly said, "Fundamentally, it seems to be heading in the right direction," and added, "But why so timid? Why so slow? If we are facing an era-defining moment, then why not move with the pace that that era demands?" Defence Secretary John Healey replied that he would reject that characterization completely. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you've not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Thank you, take care, goodbye.